All right, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for TNP's weekly HR check-in with Ann Laguzza of the Works Consulting. We're happy to have you here. We appreciate all of you continuing to support our communities, and TNP really does lean into our mission of building the capacity of your organization so that you can make positive change in your communities. We're happy to continue to support all of you, and please let us know what other resources you will continue to need. You can notify us at info@tnpsocal.org with your ideas or with your requests for resources. We remain committed to supporting your organization through this pandemic and beyond, and we look forward to seeing you again in person, but until we can do that, we look forward to seeing you further online. I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Christina Krishbaum. I'm the program manager for TNP, and I also wanted to thank our sponsors for our check-in, the Josephine S. Gumbiner Foundation. They really have stepped in and helped us provide our webinars as well as our check-ins and allow us to provide these to you free of charge. So without their support, we wouldn't be able to do this. We are truly grateful to them for their support during this time. And I just wanted to put in a couple plugs. If anyone is interested, we do have our next free webinar, which will be on May 14th at 11 a.m. And we are featuring Jan Masaoka of Cal Nonprofits to discuss the Causes Count survey and the results from that data, but also talking about what's next for nonprofits in California. What can we expect coming down the pike? And also TNP has our regular programming available as well. So for anybody that is interested in further professional development for you or for your staff, we have some great things coming up in May. Even just next week, we have our Digital Marketing 101 workshop with Sweeney Mae Montanola. A lot of you may remember her from our Long Beach Gives campaign and also from our Digital Marketing Bootcamp. This is a streamlined version that will take place on May 12th. We also have coming up, we only have about 2 spots left for our Communicating with Your Team and Supervision classes. Those start on May 13th. It covers the DISC assessment as well as supervision techniques and how to build a really strong team. And then later this month, we actually do have our Lunch and Learn, Mastering Your Email Inbox. So for those of you who are inundated under hundreds, potentially thousands of emails, depending on how busy you are, how do you climb out from under that? How do you structure your inbox so that you are working more efficiently and in truth, putting in less time to do so. So we're really looking forward to having that. It's our first time hosting it, and that will be May 26th at 11 a.m. with Damon Kolaluka. So hopefully we'll be able to see all of you soon, whether it's at our webinars or in our workshops or through these HR check-ins, and also our affinity groups that will continue online as well. So just truly thank you all so much for continuing to work with us and to meet us here online. We really do appreciate all of you checking in with us nearly every week. So without further ado, I want to toss things over to Ann. There's a lot of excitement. There's always been a lot of excitement for every one of these topics, it seems like, but definitely a lot of questions coming in. And Ann, thankfully, you've pulled together some of the most commonly asked questions that you've been hearing in these last couple of weeks and leading into the next couple of weeks. So what are we looking at as we return, some of us, to our actual work spaces? What can we expect to encounter? So Ann, without further ado, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for being here. I say this every week if you've been here, but I love doing these webinars. There's something I look forward to also. My name's Ann Laguzza. I own the Works Consulting. We've been in business for 19 years, which is just so hard to believe. But I've been in human resources and leadership development for 29 years. And then obviously started my own business 19 years ago. And we work with both for-profit and nonprofit organizations. You will see that we have all of our social contacts there. And I'm going to do something maybe a smidge crazy today that I ran by Christina for last week, but I'm doing it this week. So if you do take a picture at any time during this webinar, if it's of you in the presentation, if it's of the presentation, if it's, I don't know, of your office, I don't care. As long as you tag us and post it on either Instagram, LinkedIn, or Facebook, and you have to tag both of us. It's really important. I'm going to send you a gift. Okay. Now, I know this is going to get saved and recorded for later, so I'm going to sort of make that promise. It's going to be basically today. I'll kind of look in the next hour or two after the webinar is open for posting, and I'll send gifts out after that time, but we have cool little gifts here that I want to give away. And so this is a perfect time to do it. So all you need to do is take a picture of yourself interacting with the webinar in some way, or just of the webinar, of me being crazy up here, and then tag both myself and the nonprofit partnership. You'll notice that my Facebook tag is a little different than my Instagram and LinkedIn tag, which is just my name. So I'm excited to do these FAQs. And I also want to put out there that if you do have any topics that you'd like us to cover next Friday, just let us know. We're always open to hearing whatever hot topics from you all as well. What I've kind of enjoyed about doing these is I noticed that we are just a smidge ahead of everyone else, which is great, because I noticed that this week there were lots of webinars all about what we talked about last Friday. So I kind of love that we've been able to just stay a little bit ahead of where everybody's at. So these are FAQs, frequently asked questions, that I've been putting together over the past few weeks. I have many, many people that I talk to every single day, but many of you are talking about the same thing. So what I did is I put them together. I have 8 questions that I'm going to ask you, or I'm going to tell you about. And then we want to hear your questions too. So while I'm talking, feel free to type your questions into the Q&A box. And at the end, I will go through your questions. So in case I don't touch on it, or even if you want to ask right now and you don't even know what I'm going to talk about just yet, feel free to go ahead and put it in there, and that's fine. I'll go through and I'll answer as many questions as I can. But I put together the most common. It was funny, I pulled my team together virtually, and we brainstormed yesterday, and I already had 5 of them, and then they gave me 3 more that I thought were really good. So we were just like trying to figure out what had been the top questions, even up to sort of the last minute of yesterday, what were the most popular ones we were getting. So I'm excited to go through these with you. Okay, so number 1, I recalled my employee from furlough, and they said they don't want to return because they're making more money receiving unemployment than as an employee at my organization. What do I do? So this is happening a lot right now to many of my clients. So furlough, as you may recall, is where you haven't laid off your employee. You've just basically told them you don't have any work for them, and now you're bringing them back. You might have laid people off and want to bring them back, and you may still hear the same feedback. So anytime your employee is basically not currently working for you, you're ready to pull them back in, and remote or otherwise, by the way, and they say, oh, you know what? I'm making more money under unemployment right now, so I think I'd rather just stay on unemployment. So here's some things for you to consider if the employee declines to return. The very first thing I want you to be really honest with yourself is, was this employee a high performer before the stay-at-home order? I'm hearing more about I'd rather accept unemployment from employees that weren't quite the high performers. So I want you to be really honest about that and ask yourself, was this person really my go-to person, or am I recalling them back because I'm bringing everybody back, or just because, they were my employee before, so I'm just going to keep them now, whatever the reason is. So really ask yourself that question, because I think that response to hearing that you're going to be employed again is very telling about your employee. It also, by the way, might say a lot about how they feel about leadership or your organization. So there is also something to sort of be honest about, reflecting on that as well. So was this a high performer, and did I really set an environment that someone would be excited to come back to? So it's a moment to be a little introspective. Now, then what do you do? Okay, so let's say you still would like to move forward. I think you should open a discussion with them and ask them, tell them about how excited you are for them to come back, why you need them to come back, and you were really hoping that they would be excited as well. And make sure you give a specific return to work date, because a lot of people I'm talking to right now are being very soft about everything, and it's unclear. So employees are under the impression that it's like a negotiation, like, hey, if you want to come back to work, we have work. And it's like, well, I don't know if I really want to come back to work. So if you want them to come back to work, you have to tell them, like, hey, we're excited. We've got your position back. We're ready to bring you back on. Your first day will be May 23rd. And then go from there, right? You may even want to provide, I'm going to want you to provide everything in writing that you do, but I would have a verbal conversation because I want them to hear me, or do a Zoom. That would be great, so they can see you. And then they may still decline. They may be like, well, I'm not really sure that I want to come back. Okay, well then, you're going to go ahead and just confirm that as a voluntary resignation. I'm not going to rush to this, but what I'm going to say to them is, hey, listen, like we really need to move forward. So I guess if you don't want to come back, then we're going to just accept that as a voluntary resignation and we'll send you out some information. And if between now and when you get that information, you change your mind, make sure to let me know. And then you go ahead and start the hiring process. You can wait as long as you want. I'm not telling you you have to accept a resignation. However, I don't know how long you're going to want to wait if everyone starts telling you they don't want to come back to work. So I just want you to know that if someone's declining an offer of employment, you are not required to continue to hold the job open for them indefinitely. I would engage in a meaningful conversation. I would make sure, I would try to, maybe there's a fear that they didn't bring up initially. I want to talk to them and really make sure that I understand what's going on, because I want them to come back to work, right? This is a great opportunity. Okay, so number 2, can I take my employee's temperature? I swear, I think this should have been number 1. By the way, these are in no particular order, but I feel like this one should have been number 1 because I get asked this question so many times. So as of right now, the answer is yes, you can. There's a number of things you're going to want to think about, and I'm going to talk about those on the next slide. So I kind of gave you some of the basis here. We have the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, which is federal. We have the Department of Fair Employment and Housing, which is California. And now we're all talking about the CDC. I don't know about any of you, but in my whole entire career, I've never really looked to the CDC for any kind of guidance in the workplace for the most part. And we all talk about it now all the time. So now there's been a lot of there was a lot of conflict about could you take a temperature or could you not? Now the answer is yes, you can, for very limited purposes and only to evaluate the risk of the COVID-19 pandemic. So the threat that it poses in the workplace, but only for that reason. Okay, you can't go after and take temperatures, you can't start doing other things. But there are things that we're allowed to do now that just, if you had talked to me 2 months ago, 3 months ago, I would have said, oh no, we can't do that, right? But now we can. But there's some things I want you to think about before you do this. And there is a lot of information online about this. It's fantastic. You can look with the CDC, Fisher Phillips. I know I've mentioned them before. They are a fantastic law firm that is on top of all of these issues. If you're not getting their daily notifications, get them. I don't really get daily notifications because I get so many emails, but for them, I get them all the time because they're really good. Okay, so taking temperatures. So good to remember, some people with COVID-19 don't have a fever. I know someone who just lost their sense of taste and smell. They had no other symptoms at all. So taking a temperature doesn't mean, doesn't equal, I don't have a fever, my work environment's going to be COVID-19 free. Okay, so just keep that in mind. I recommend that you have a medical professional train the administrator of the testing. So what I know a lot of people are doing, sorry, you guys, this is the work from home moment right here. So I know what a lot of people are doing is, oh, I'm going to Amazon and I'm buying the gun that's on the, what's that called, where they deliver it, the Prime delivery, and, it's highly rated. I mean, you're going to have to take a moment to really make sure you're buying the right tools. And then who's doing the testing, right? Is it just like, hey, I'm just a supervisor, I'm just going to be testing people as they come in. So it's ideal that you actually have somebody train them. Now, I don't know what the reality is of being able to find somebody right now to train, but I first, like if it were me, I'm not doing temperature testing in my office, but what I would do is I would contact some of these fantastic community clinics out there, some of your nonprofit partners, and say, hey, we need somebody to help us with, this temperature testing. Is there somebody, a nurse or somebody that we could pay to come and help for an hour and maybe go over some of the things we need to think about? But that's where I would start. And I don't know that that's going to work. I'm just saying that's where I would start. The other thing you really need to think about is, what is this procedure going to look like, right? So I don't know if all of your employees show up at the same time, but if they all show up at 8 o'clock, okay, so they're met there by the tester and everyone gets scanned as they come in. If not everyone starts at the same time, what happens when people start later in the day? What do they do? Do they stand in the lobby? Do they wait outside? Do they have to text the person who does the scanning? Because we don't want them wandering around the office trying to find that person if potentially now they have a fever. So definitely some things to think about. As of right now, you are not required to do the testing. So I really do want you to think about if it's necessary for your workplace. Obviously, you have to administer the test in the least invasive way possible. And it has to be administered in a non-discriminatory way. You cannot, and I know someone's going to come up with this idea, oh, we'll just do like a random sampling of people. Well, unless you truly have a randomizer that you've purchased that, this happens with Department of Transportation regulations, so you have to do random drug testing. There's truly a randomized program. It's not just me picking people every day. It pops up, it sends me an email, it says, Ann Laguzza is up for test today. So if you're going to do something like that, you're going to want to make sure you invest in a system that actually randomizes what's going on. So it doesn't look like you're picking and choosing certain people. There are definitely privacy protocols that have to be followed. I'm not going into all of those, but I will tell you there's lots of rules about if you're going to have people sign in and then put their temperature. There's rules about what they sign in with, how you store that information, how long you store it. It gets a little complicated, but it's not impossible. Make sure HIPAA still applies, okay? So we wanna make sure if someone has a fever and we send them home, that then we're not walking around telling everybody, hey, Ann had a fever today, we had to send her home. So don't forget HIPAA rules, and you're gonna hear me bring that up again because it is still a law. And then have written procedures and appropriate notifications to the employees. So you want to have a clear written policy on how you're administering taking temperatures, and you want to make sure you've notified your employees well in advance of how it's going to work. What temperature, when are you taking it? What's the temperature number, that they're going to need to be sent home? What happens then? I think you have to wait 24 hours before they test again. Not with you necessarily. They can do a self-test, but make sure their fevers drop below, and then they would come in and then you would test them again and make sure that they're able to work. But just follow the guidelines. Do look into the different tools that we have out there in terms of, like I said, the CDC, the DFEH, the EEOC. They all have guidelines and they will help you through this process if you want to do it. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit later about what we are going to need to put out there sort of visually for employees to see. And I will say that although I have mixed feelings about taking temperatures, honestly, just personally, that's not a recommendation. I also understand that visually that may give some peace of mind to your employees, and that may be why you choose to do that, and that's fine. Just take some appropriate steps to do it. Don't just be like, oh yeah, I can grab this temperature gun and I'll just scan and no big deal. There are some rules. Okay. So don't forget about that. That's important. Okay. Number 3, can I recall just the employees that I want to return? I only smile at these, you guys, because every time that I come across, I'm like, man, I can tell you how many times I've been asked these questions. So I call this selected recall. So we haven't been managing performance and we think, oh, this is a great time to clear out the employees who are frustrating, who aren't doing their job, who we've been, having trouble with, but we haven't been able to terminate yet. Well, you might want to pause before you do that. Okay. So if you're using not recalling employees as a management tool, I'm going to probably guess you're going to have some problems with that, and you may not easily be able to say goodbye to these people yet. You know how I feel. It is my mission to teach every leader out there how to successfully manage their teams and have those teams successfully engaged and effective and enjoying their workplace. But that's a whole nother webinar. So that's a whole nother webinar. That's a whole nother coaching process, right? But for today, it might not be as easy as you want without finding some legal challenges. So you really have to make sure that you're making these decisions appropriately. And I would probably consult definitely a second opinion on my plan before I do it. You just may inadvertently be not recalling everyone that's over 40, which is a protected age group. You may be not recalling everyone that happens to be of a certain race. And that's not your intention, but that's the perception. So we really want to be careful about this. So you're going to have to evaluate each position and determine which ones won't be recalled and why. And these should ideally be objective criteria. doesn't have the skills that we need. You know, we can only have one marriage family therapist, and we really need one that's bilingual because of our population. So we have one that isn't, one that is. We can only keep one. We're keeping the one that's bilingual. Okay, that would be objective criteria. Maybe you're going to look at dates of hire. These 3 people were the last in, so these 3 people are the first out. If you have documented performance, you can actually look at that and say, wow, you know, we have 2 employees in the same position. This one, we've written them up 3 times, or they were on a final notice, or whatever the situation is, documented, well documented, that the employee knows about. Well, we're obviously not bringing them back, because why would we, if we only could bring back one of these people, why are we bringing back the person that's already had documented performance? Okay, we're going to choose the person that doesn't have documented performance. So you're definitely going to want to look at those areas. You're going to want to get your second opinion, and you're going to want to look at any potential issues out there. You know, just laying off your low performers is not performance management. I understand that you might have an opportunity now to make that decision, but you have to promise me that if legally you're allowed to do that, that you will look at your hiring practices and your performance management practices going forward, because you will be in the same position again if you haven't learned from it. I remember one of my very first webinars I ever attended. It was called, oh, now I forget, one of my favorite webinars, and I forget, it was called, oh my gosh, I really did forget what it was called. But it basically, what it was saying is that you'd rather terminate someone than write them up, right? Like, I'd prefer to terminate employment than to write them up. And the reason is because a termination ends it, right? You don't have to see them day after day. You don't have to answer questions. You don't have to hear if they have conflict or if they start giving you feedback about your management style. So you want to make sure that you realize that managing performance is part of the job. So get a second opinion, look at objective criteria, really evaluate the decisions you're making, and well before you make them. Okay, number 4. Well, how am I going to keep up with all of these cleaning requirements? Okay, I have seen many lists now of the things that we have to try to keep clean and the high touch areas, and I understand it's a lot right now. So what are you going to do? Well, I'm going to tell you, there is an interesting expectation out there. A lot of my clients are doing the survey with their employees where they're asking them, you know, about what are they excited to, you know, when they return to work, what are they excited about? What are they concerned about? What are their questions? And what we're noticing and this is off around all different types of organizations, a very common thread is that the employee is expecting the employer to be in charge of keeping the environment clean. So it's all questions around, what are you going to do to make sure the restrooms stay clean? What are you going to do to make sure that the break room area is clean? And not a lot of questions about, will you provide me cleaning supplies, or will I, have ample access to paper towels or whatever the cleaning, materials are that I need to clean my desk? Will I have ample access to gloves, etc.? So you have a lot of responsibility, and we're going to want to start shifting that in some degree, not that it's all the employee's responsibility, but that it really needs to be a joint responsibility. Depending on how many people you have in your organization and what your office space looks like, a small management team isn't going to be able to be everywhere. And even if you decide, we're going to bring on an extra, maybe a maintenance person or someone who's kind of doing housekeeping, if you will, they're not going to be able to be everywhere all the time. So we're going to really have to be figuring out, how do we communicate what cleanliness is, what the high touch areas are, and what are we going to ask our employees to help with, and what are we going to do? It might be things like, hey, after you use the restroom, we're going to have, spray there and paper towels. Please wipe down the counter and the faucets and everything every time after you're done in the restroom. It might be in the kitchen area. As soon as you open the refrigerator, please wipe down the handle, and here's the equipment to do so. Maybe you're going to have gloves by the refrigerator. We don't want anyone touching the refrigerator handle. Always put a glove on, open the refrigerator, get your food out, close, and then dispose of the glove. There's a lot of things you're going to need to think about, but you're going to want to be very clear in communicating who's doing what. Definitely prepare for complaints, because they're going to happen. You're going to have people telling you that somebody didn't wash their hands in the restroom. I mean, I don't know about all of you, but I know a lot of people weren't washing their hands before this all started. I certainly hope that many people have picked up their cleanliness habits, but I'm not expecting anybody to be perfect. I was somewhere the other day out in at a grocery store, and I accidentally touched my eye, and I was like, oh my gosh, I just touched my eye. Like, just wasn't thinking, right? This is going to happen. We're human. We're going to make mistakes, and you're going to get complaints about it. You're going to get complaints that so-and-so touched their eye, that somebody didn't wipe down their desk, that they didn't clean their hands. So who's going to get those complaints? And you're going to want to have a policy around who should they go to if they have a concern about the cleanliness in the workplace. And then like I've shared, I believe on the last webinar, we talk a lot about maybe trying to think of a team or people. Again, it depends on the size of your organization. If you're 4 or 5 people, one person's probably fine. If you're larger, if we're talking closer, in the 20s, 30s, 40s and up, you might want to put a few people in charge. Keep documented cleaning schedules by those high traffic areas. If you've been into a restroom and a lot of times at a restaurant, they'll have this, right? And they'll have the cleaning schedule on the back of the door, and it'll show you what day and the initials of who cleaned it. You're going to want to do that in high traffic areas so that employees are needing to see the visual. They need to see that you are taking steps to make things different. We're all not 100% sure that this means that no one's getting sick, right? But I can guarantee you that if you do nothing and somebody does get sick, they're going to be looking at you right away. But if you're at least trying to do the right things, they're going to be feeling safer and more comfortable that you're making those attempts. You're going to want to get creative on how to minimize high touch areas. So one of my clients I was talking to yesterday, they happen to have a 3D printer, and they made those no-touch keys is what they're called, in varying sizes, and they're making a welcome bag for all their employees to come back, and they're giving them those keys, and they've been testing them on all their doors, on the coffee maker, anything it pushes. If you haven't seen them, it makes it so you can push buttons. It makes it so you can open doors, if the handle kind of goes like that, all of that. So they've been using or just pulling a handle. They've been using them to test them out, the management team right now, to make sure that they work in the workplace, and then they're going to be giving those out. So you're going to maybe need to get a little creative. I know another one of my clients is giving out cooler bags, pretty heavy duty cooler bags to everybody when they come back, because some people aren't going to want to put their lunch in the refrigerator. And guess what? We still have to provide a place to cool food for our employees in California. It hasn't changed yet. I know they keep saying close the break room, but what I believe they actually mean is make it so that people can't sit in there and hang out. But I haven't heard any, and I've checked with a couple of attorneys at this point, but I haven't heard anything about the fact that you aren't still needing to provide a refrigerator, and then also somewhere for employees to cool their food and somewhere for them to keep it warm. So they're going to do, it doesn't have to be a refrigerator, but they're going to do cooler bags, and they're going to give every single employee their own individual cooler bag that they're in charge of, that they can keep at their work area, that they can keep clean. So it's an idea. Now, when we talk about cleaning supplies, I didn't go into a lot of detail on this, but I just want to mention you do have responsibility on what the materials are in that cleaning supplies, how they're used. If, people should be wearing gloves while they're spraying them, being aware of overspray, because I think you're going to have, depending on how close quarters you are, sometimes the spray and the scent and all that's going to bother other people. You're going to be dealing with a lot of new things, perhaps, that you haven't dealt with. It's a lot to consider there. Okay, number 5, what happens if one of my employees tests positive for COVID-19? What am I going to do? Well, remember HIPAA, okay? So HIPAA applies. We don't disclose the name of the employee to anyone. And even if everyone's guessing, like, oh my goodness, Anne was just here and now she's gone. Is she testing positive? We can't confirm that. What you want to do is focus on what you have to do for the employees in the workplace. So you do have to notify any employees who've been exposed in writing, but you also are going to have to make a quick decision if they need to get out of the workplace quickly and go self-quarantine quickly. And you're going to require them to do that because they've potentially been exposed. So, but you do want to notify them if someone's been exposed. Now, I'll give you an example of what happened to one of my clients. They found out that 3 of their employees were exposed outside of the workplace. So they had gone to another location. But when they found out, it was already day 11. It was really interesting. So it was day 11. No one had presented any symptoms in their group or in their organization. They have about 70 employees. So they sent out notification in writing saying what had happened, that 3 employees had been exposed. They were asymptomatic. If anybody had any symptoms, to please come to human resources, and that those employees had been self-quarantined for the remaining, would have been 3 more days. And then they did that, and then they came back to the workplace and everything's fine. Thank goodness for them. But that's like an example of like, that was interesting because already 11 days had passed and no one had had any symptoms. So it doesn't always mean people are going to get sick, but we want to take we want to take those precautions, not take our chances, be precautious and make sure we're taking care of our employees. If you do decide to send people home for self-quarantine, you can have them work from home again if their job allows for that. It doesn't mean that you have to let them freeze from working. If they're still feeling well, you could just say, you know what, I'm going to have you work remote for the next 14 days and then we'll see how it goes. And then talk to your workers' compensation broker now. Like, how do I handle these issues? If somebody claims there was exposure at work, do I file the normal workers' comp paperwork and then the carrier will make a determination if it did or didn't happen at work? I know there's been a lot of movement in that area right now in terms of how California is looking at the responsibility if someone gets sick at work. So, but I would say have those conversations with your broker now. They should be full of information in terms of helping you in this area, but you do have some responsibilities and you have to make sure to take care of your employees. Now, one of the things I want to say about notifying people. So the client I just shared with you, they have 2 locations. The 3 employees that were exposed only work in 1 location. So we don't need to notify the whole other location. Okay. So it's kind of thinking about HIPAA and appropriateness and professionalism. So they just notified the 1 area that was affected. They made sure to be clear that they were only in this building. They were not at the other building. So be thoughtful about that as well. Make sure we're not, communicating too far out to too many people and then potentially kind of violating HIPAA. Well, in this case, we wouldn't be using their name anyway. Okay, number 6. Well, what if I can't locate the necessary supplies, the PPE supplies, because we're getting told a lot of things, right? That cloth masks should be worn. Potentially if employees want to wear them all the time, if employers want to require them to be worn in the workplace, you can. What about all these cleaning supplies I keep talking about? What about wipes, things like that? Well, team safety is got to be the top priority right now. So if you don't feel you have the necessary supplies for people to feel adequately protected at work, then I would not bring people back yet. Or I would do it in phases for what you have. One of my clients yesterday just shared with me, they purchased, they're making like little kits for each of the employees. They have some wipes, they have a personalized hand sanitizer. There was one other thing in there, but they're making them, they're, branding them and they're going to have more supplies than that, but they're making sure every single employee has their own personal kit that they can keep kind of as theirs. And then they're of course providing greater, generalized supplies for everybody. So if you can't obtain the necessary precautions, then you may have to delay people returning to work. You may consider a reimbursement. So I don't know if anybody saw this, but when we first went to, like restaurants, coffee shops, they all of a sudden had to wear the cloth covering. I mean, I went to a Starbucks close to my house and somebody had a hot pink one on, somebody had flowers on. Somebody really literally looked like they, cut up a sweatshirt and tied it around their face for the day. It seemed a little haphazard. I noticed the last time I went, it was much more organized. So, it could be, I'm assuming in that situation, it was like, we all have to wear them and we're trying to get the resources to you. So if you don't have enough face masks perhaps, or someone really wants to wear one and you don't have one yet, you could certainly consider a reimbursement for that, an appropriate reimbursement that they're going to provide it, but you really should be providing them. So start planning now, right? I'm hoping you guys started planning 4 weeks ago, but I'm afraid some of you might not have. You need to start planning out what are the things you need to be looking for out, in our general like Target, et cetera. Maybe what do we need to be ordering online? Maybe how can you guys get together and buy in bulk? I don't know if anybody's even thought of that, but how do you all connect together? I know Michelle from the partnership and I were just talking about that yesterday. I was like, wow, there might be a bulk buying opportunity here. So how do you get together and maybe buy, and then things get a little less expensive and maybe it'd be easier to buy if you're buying more. So you'll have to look into all that, but your team safety is top priority and they are counting on you for things to be looking differently from a cleanliness level. Okay, number 7. Well, what if my employee wants to stay remote? So I tell them they can come back to work and they say, well, gosh, why can't I just stay remote? It seems to be working really well. Well, that's a great question that I think you need to ask yourself. Has productivity declined? Because if it hasn't, maybe they can stay remote. Maybe it's time for us to start looking at things a little differently if we have never done this before. And then you need to you need to really, again, sort of look internally and say, what are your biggest concerns? Is it more of a control thing? Because that's honestly happens sometimes. It's like, well, I just feel like, so is it more about you shifting and being a different kind of leader and learning how to really connect using tools like Teams or Zoom or whatever you might have at your disposal? Or is it really that they need to be in the workplace? So consider alternatives. Is there a way for them to stay remote for now? Maybe you're like, okay, you know what? I'm willing to let you do this for like another month, but then I want to revisit it because I'm not totally sure, right? Consider remote for a specified period of time, and then consider a hybrid schedule, right? Well, let's think about this. We have a Tuesday team meeting. I'd really like for you to be in the office, and I know those team meetings are going to look different, but like you to be in the office on Tuesdays, but Monday and Wednesday and Friday, more than happy to have you work out of the office. Tuesday and Thursday, be in the office, something like that. Maybe there's a half day option. Maybe there's just one day a week they can work remote. But I would say be a little open-minded. If the productivity hasn't declined, I'm not sure what your biggest concern is for them staying remote. So you're going to definitely need to look at that, but I think that's a reasonable request for them to have. Do you have every right to say, no, the position does not, there is no continued remote work. It's an office position. You absolutely do. And you can make that decision. And then the employee will decide if they would like to return or not. And if they don't want to return, then they're resigning because you have a job available for them. And you want to have good documentation of that and give them maybe a couple of days to think about it. I wouldn't be like rushing them on the phone, but if you're giving them, a week or more notice of a return to work date, and they tell you they don't think they want to return, I would give them a couple of days to think about it, just like you would think about it in terms of making an offer of employment to somebody, right? So you call somebody, you make a new offer of employment, and you usually don't say, well, tell me right now, right? Tell me right now, or the offer is going off the table. So give them maybe a couple of days to think about it, talk to their people, whoever those people might be, and they may change their mind. Okay, number 8, and then I'm open to all of your questions. How do I maintain the continuity of the culture while taking all of the necessary safety precautions? I got to be honest. I don't totally know that I have the answer to this. If you are putting up plexiglass, if now we don't we don't go out for lunch, we don't have birthday celebrations, we don't have team meetings, things are going to feel different. If we're not hugging in the morning, things are going to feel different. Right? So I think you need to begin those discussions now with both leaders and employees. I think everybody needs to start talking about it. Hey, this was our culture before, what are you all envisioning that it's going to look like while we're social distancing, while we're 6 feet apart, while we're not allowed to, hang out in the break room together? What is that going to look like? And how do we keep our continuity of our culture? And I'm not saying one meeting is going to reveal the answer. I think this is going to be something that every organization is going to be working on for months. As long as we have to keep all these precautions in place, I think we're going to be continuing to revisit this issue, because I think you're going to have employees feel disconnected, and they're going to be frustrated by the changes. I think some leaders are going to be frustrated, and I think it's going to really impact the culture. So we're going to have to keep those discussions open. Some things are definitely going to change, right? Our team lunches in one room are going to change. Our large gatherings, our outings, they're going to change. For now, right? And I don't know how long that is, but for now, the break room, the coffee area connections, those are going to change. Stopping in the hallway and chatting, it's going to change a little bit. So it's going to be different. So if anyone's under the impression like it's going to be exactly the same, I think you are being short-sighted on this. I think you've got to really think that it's going to be different. Doesn't mean it has to be a bad different. It's just going to be different. The changes in the physical space, though, or in like the safety precautions and all of this should not impact how you demonstrate that your team members are valued. That stays the same. How you celebrate success, or I should say that you celebrate success. How you celebrate it might look a little different, but absolutely, we've still got to celebrate successes. The way you manage performance, it should not change. I mean, again, maybe the how you do it, right? We might not be able to be always meeting one-on-one, but you've got to still manage performance. You've got to manage your high performers, your mid performers, and your low performers. And your vision and your mission. You still are going where you're going. You have your plan. You know what you are trying to accomplish in your organization. We're just going to have to figure out how to do it, maybe with some plexiglass, maybe with some additional hand sanitizer, maybe with no touch keys, etc. Right? So it's going to impact it to a degree, but at the end of the day, you're true to who you are. And I think that's really important. Okay, so with that, one of my favorite times is I open it up to your questions. I'm gonna go up here now and let's see, and I'm gonna just answer. So if you have any, go ahead. We don't actually have that many today. So great, I mean, great or not great, whatever, but I'll answer those. So let's see, the first question is, do you need to report to unemployment that they've been offered their job back and declined, or is that up to them? So as of right now, I don't know that unemployment is coming back to the employer after the initial ask, right? So after the initial form that you get, are they eligible for unemployment? However, you're going to document in a letter that says, we offered you your job back, and you want to make sure you're clear that you're offering the same comp, the same hours, the same job classification. If it's different, you can say that too. We're offering you part-time work at this rate of pay, and this is the job title. Whatever you're offering them, document it clearly. And if they voluntarily decline to accept the position, that's what I would write. I would say you voluntarily decline to accept the position, and we wish you the best. Make sure they get a copy of that letter, and you keep a copy in their employee file. They are supposed to be reporting every 2 weeks. They're supposed to be reporting to unemployment if they're available and ready for work. I think they got a 1 month grace period on that. It might have even gone to 2 months. But going forward, the idea isn't that people are going to stay on unemployment forever. So they're going to have to state that they're ready and available. And I just want to make sure that you've documented really clearly what you can do. As far as I know right now, there's no way to sort of report that back to unemployment, but that may very well change. So I would say stay tuned for that, and you may need to do that, but at least clearly document it. Bringing back laid off workers, what documentation is needed? I present an offer letter because they were laid off, so they're no longer your employees. So whatever you did, whatever you normally do for new hires, which is a written offer letter, and you offer them the position, whatever the pay rate is, of course, have your at will statement in there, what benefits they're eligible for. One of the decisions you might have to make is if you're going to allow them to be put back at the same accrual rate they were left at. So if I left at, let's say, 3 years accrual for vacation, now I'm a brand new employee, but it's only been a couple of months. Are you going to let me be back at my same vacation accrual? You do not have to unless you have a policy that says you will, but it's just something to think about. Now, sick leave, just so you all remember, in California, you have to remember if they are rehired within a year, you have to give them back whatever sick leave was on the books when they left. So you will have to bring that back. But then the accrual still goes back to whatever the accrual would be for a new hire. Whatever exception you make for one, you have to make for all those. So please don't start saying, well, we really like this person and we're going to give them their vacation accrual, but this person, they weren't really that great. We're just bringing them back because we have to. So you're going to have to make it for all. But yeah, so that's what I would do. I'm doing that with one of my clients right now. We're doing offer letter. We're actually making voice offers. We have a lot of employees in that situation. We're making voice offers just like we would with a new hire. Excited, can't wait. We're going to send you an offer letter. This is what the job is going to be. This is the pay rate, etc. So that's what I would do. Hi, Mike. What's your position on antibody testing? Oh, should the employer recommend employees get tested? So for example, LA City's offering any resident a free test. Hey, that's really cool. I didn't know that. I keep waiting for that to happen in Long Beach. And I keep seeing every time they have the test, but then it hasn't quite come to just everybody. Should an employee take a position on recommending tests? I'll be honest, I don't know if you should recommend tests at this point. I think that I haven't read anything that is kind of in the employer's area at this point. It's sort of like other tests we might recommend somebody take, a cholesterol test or something like that. It normally isn't really any of our business. What you might decide to do is when those things are available, you might decide if you have somewhere where you know, whether it's an intranet or on a board or whatever, you post things for people to know. You might want to, you might do something like that just to let people know, but without taking a position on it. But that is something I would pay attention to, because I feel like that might be something that becomes one of those areas that today I'm like, oh, not sure about, and it might move over into it's absolutely fine. Great questions, you guys. Thank you. What's a reasonable reimbursement rate for internet phone use for employees working remotely? I know I don't have a specific answer for that, but what I offered before, and it still stands, I think I offered it over 3 weeks ago. If you all want to email me and tell me what you're offering, I'm more than happy to look at that. You have to do the work. You have to put it together for me and say, okay, full-time employee, we're going to offer this. You know, internet, we're going to offer this. I mean, for a cell phone, most people are doing $40 to $50 a month for a full-time employee. The internet, you know, I'm really seeing a lot of variation on that because it just depends on how much they're having to use the internet. But you are going to want to find sort of a reasonable price for internet use, and not necessarily what you're paying in your office, because you may get a really good deal. Yeah, like I actually I thought mine was like 50 or 60. I think I'm actually paying 75 or something for my internet. Now, you don't have to go around and ask every employee, but you're going to have to come up with something reasonable, and then thinking, are they using it about 40 hours a week? You know, maybe they're not on their computer completely 40 hours a week, but whatever, close enough. We're not going to, you know, argue over 5 or 6 hours, and then figure that out. Because in the weekends, you don't have to pay for, obviously. But again, that offer still stands. If anybody, actually, I think one person did do it. I will say that. I saw one just a couple weeks ago. Somebody put down their whole reimbursement plan and I approved it. So let's see. The free testing is for all residents of LA County, not just the city of LA. Thank you. Thank you. What are our options if a staff family member has contracted COVID-19? Can we exercise the right to mandate that they stay home? So yes, if someone states that they've been exposed, so this just happened to one of my clients. So I don't know, there's been this desire for some employees to feel super connected to this disease. I don't know. I'm just hoping, I don't know anybody yet personally, and I hope I don't. You know, no one in my family's been affected, thank goodness, and I hope I don't. So they mentioned to some coworkers that her son had been exposed. And so what she didn't tell her coworkers is she hasn't seen her son for 3 weeks. So it was really, so once this got to HR, we talked to the employee right away and we said, when was the last time you were exposed? Actually, I think we sent the employee home right away, but sent the employee home and said, okay, when was the last time you were exposed? And to him, and she said 3 weeks ago. Well, that's over the 14-day period. Then we said, are you experiencing any symptoms of COVID-19? And she said no. And then we said, okay, you can come back to work. And we're going to have to go somewhat on the honor system here. Now, if I had another client who they have had someone who was exposed, and he said, my wife was exposed and I'm going to stay home for 14 days because I'm just not really sure. Excuse me, y'all. I'm going to plug my computer in as it's telling me it needs to be plugged in. And so we just went ahead and let him have his 14 days off. He was able to use regular sick pay for that because, as you remember, EPSL is if you're diagnosed, and he actually was not diagnosed. He just wanted to take the precautions to stay at home. Okay, sorry about that. There we go. Okay, so that's what I would do. And you guys, and those of you who are calling people back, you're actually allowed to ask them those questions. You're allowed to say, have you been exposed to anybody in, you know, for the last 14 days that's either been diagnosed with, or they've been exposed to COVID-19? And are you experiencing any symptoms yourself? You can definitely ask those questions before you bring people back. That's one of those new things that we've never been able to ask before. But you could only ask it for this reason. So you have to be very specific. You can't just say, have you been sick in the last 14 days? You're not allowed to say that. We discussed taking temperatures of employees. What about a questionnaire about having COVID-19 symptoms? You can definitely do. There are limited questions that you can ask, and those are available again on some of those websites I mentioned, the DFEH, the CDC. It's a few questions you can ask, but I will say every time you all start writing things down, there's all these rules about who has access to it and where you're going to retain it and how long you're allowed to retain it. So I personally, I can't make a legal recommendation, but I would be very thoughtful about how much stuff I'm actually writing down and having to keep because I think you're going to enter in this whole area of documentation you may or may not be ready for. But you certainly could have some verbal questions that you're asking, and then only document if someone states that, yes, I haven't actually, you know what, I did wake up today with a fever. I'm not feeling really great. Okay, this is what we're going to do. And then, you know, I've been writing lots and lots of letters for my clients, documenting all kinds of situations. I'm just making sure that we know what we know, they know what they know, right? And we know what each other knows, right? So we're totally clear when they're supposed to come back, when they're supposed to notify us, what's going on. Are they getting paid? Aren't they getting paid? What are they getting paid? You know, under what policy or plan? Is it under Family Medical Leave Act, California Family Rights Act? Is it not? All of that. Okay. And then I think that's it. I think we got all the questions. So I'm going to remind you guys one last time of my little challenge for you. If you would like a gift, because I've got some gifts and they're pretty good. I get good feedback about them, to be honest. But if you will post on social media that you're taking the webinar with your face or just my face or the slide, and say something about the webinar, that'd be great. You want to tag the nonprofit partnership as well as myself. You can use LinkedIn, you can use Instagram, or you can use Facebook. And on Facebook, I am under the Works Consulting. So, and with that, I think we are set, Miss Christina.
We live for swag.
Yeah, I know.
For swag.
It's good.
It is.
I wouldn't lie.
That's it. You know, I will say, I actually, and I don't think you have any of those anymore, but I am full on. I'm shameless.
Oh, I love that. I love that one.
I use this bag every single day. So this is from the Works Consulting. She does have great swag.
Bag. I love that thing.
So I don't know if you still have that one. She does have good swag. She invests in good swag. I will say that. So thank you so much for that. That is no joke. That was on my desk right here. So I guess I really
that was awesome.
It was an unplanned plug, by the way, everybody. So that was just organic. I liked it. Anyway, thank you again, Anne, for walking us through all of the questions. Thank you for sharing your expertise. Always, you're getting a lot of thank yous down in that Q&A box. And absolutely, if you want to thank Anne, you want to thank anybody or each other, post them up in that Q&A. We love to see that. And I'm just vamping just in case there is any further questions. Can the post be done on the Instagram story?
Of course, as long as we're tagged, we'll find it. I think it tells us. Yeah.
Hope so.
The main thing is I have to be able to find you so I can get your address and everything. But
there you go. That is going to be the tough part.
For sure.
So again, thank you again so much. We're getting a lot of thank yous in there. Great info. We will process this video right away, and it's my goal to get it up before the end of the day. We shall see. I think last week I was able to do that.
You did it fast.
I did. I'm getting better at some of this stuff. We'll see. So that is my goal for today. I will try and get that up and get that out to everybody. If you have any questions or seeking additional resources, anything that we can help you with, please send over an email to info@tnpsocal.org. You know, or just let us know. You have Anne's information there as well, and she did put out that great offer. So please, just like she did some weeks ago, do that initial work and then send it over to her. It's a fantastic resource to be able to take advantage of something like this at this time. So please, if you have those materials you wanted her to review, take advantage of it. Thank you so much for making that offer, Anne. We really do appreciate it. And to everybody out there, please continue to stay safe, be well. We are absolutely looking forward to, re-engaging in our workspace sometime soon. Hopefully, we'll kind of see. I know on our end, it's very much up in the air because we are typically on the Long Beach City College campus, which right now is serving as a clinic. So not our particular offices, but the main campus. Actually, both campuses now are serving as a clinic. So, okay. So we're just going with the flow, as does the nonprofit sector. We are known to be able to pivot very, very quickly. And we're known for our versatility and agility in that. So thank you all for remaining agile, remaining on the front lines, and continuing to support our communities and all that you do. You are valued. Please continue to take care of yourself. Continue to make sure that you get some time for yourself. That self-care is so important. So if anybody missed our webinar that we held, I believe oh my goodness, it's horrible, but I believe it was just yesterday. It seems so long ago. And that is actually already up on YouTube. It is already up also on our page. And that one was focusing on caring for yourself and caring for others and how you are able to support your team as they all re-engage. So there's some fantastic information through a trauma-informed lens provided yesterday, and we'll get this one up as well. So thank you again to the Josephine S. Gumbeiner Foundation for supporting this work and for making this available to everybody free of charge. We truly appreciate it. And we do hope to see all of you next week. I believe we'll be back again next week, and Ann and I will talk about next week's topic. And also for our Causes Counts webinar, which will be next week with Jan Masaoka on May 14th at 11 a.m. And just wishing everybody out there happy early Mother's Day. In case you forgot, Sunday. Which it snuck up on a lot of us. So happy early Mother's Day to everybody that's celebrating out there. And we really appreciate all of you. We look forward to seeing you again soon. So Ann, thank you again so much. Everybody take care. Have a great weekend.
Bye.